Hi, I'm David Mancuso,
I'm Liza Lucy.
live
Hi, from
from
New
New Hope,
Hope.
Pennsylvania. It's
Hey,
Thursday night.
Thursday night.
We're out of sync. We have a very fun show tonight. We have Kaffe Fassett as a guest, and I'll be right back after this message.
Welcome, quilters! We hope you've been enjoying the new Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival online. While MAQFO is free and open to the public, the team at Mancuso Show Management have put countless hours into getting everything just right. To help keep the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival going online, and when the time is right, our in-person events up and running, we are asking for a suggested admission of just $10. We've placed a link to our suggested admission page right here in the description of this video. You are free to leave more if desired, but we truly appreciate anything you can send. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we hope you are staying safe and healthy while enjoying Mid-Atlantic Quilt Fest online.
I'm here with Liza Lucy tonight. Liza's a friend, a neighbor right here in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Liza's a lady that I've known for a long time, and she's friends with both me and my wife, Terry. She wears a lot of hats. She's been a vendor at our shows. She has had a fabric business for many, many years. She's published books. She teaches. She does it all. Welcome, Liza.
Thanks, David.
It's great to see you. How's everything going?
Everything's doing great. Miss you guys.
Yeah, everybody misses.
I mean, you're a mile away, but you
Right.
know, it'd be 100 miles.
Now, Liza, did you grow up in the Easton area? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, which
Honesdale,
is
okay.
the north end of the Delaware River. I'm at the south end now.
Okay, and you ended up going to school in Easton, correct?
Right between the two towns,
Yeah,
yes.
between the two, yes,
Lafayette
okay.
College,
I know you're a big advocate of Easton. Easton, if anyone that doesn't know, Easton is up in Lehigh Valley, just north of us here at New Hope. So tell me, I mean, I don't know. I always figure out somebody started somewhere in this. I say this all the time. How did you ever get into quilting? I mean, how did this start?
Well, I can't remember a time that I wasn't holding a needle in my hand in one way or another. But when I went to Lafayette College, I was in the first year of women there, and I had a boyfriend, and he had a waterbed, and it needed a quilt. So I sewed 25 bandanas together and took corduroy and put it on the back and a big fluffy bat, and I tied them together, and it was for my boyfriend's waterbed.
My
It was
God.
my first quilt.
I wonder if we have a picture of that quilt.
We don't.
So what we do have a picture of a quilt I believe you did in college?
No, I did this 40 years later.
Okay.
I went to Lafayette, as I said, as a first co-ed. And in celebration of women on campus, they tried to come up with different ideas that would symbolize what was important at their time. And they knew me as a quilt maker. And so they asked me if I would make a kind of a t-shirt quilt, that sort of thing. And it's way out of my comfort zone. I mostly don't like them very well because they lack color. So I guess you have a picture of what I came up with. I wrote to all 125 women who I went to school with that year and said, send me your embroidery or send me your t-shirts or send me photographs. Photographs were hard to come by. People didn't take pictures much back then. And I printed the photographs on muslin. And then I added color by adding batiks and Indian print fabrics, which were the kind of fabrics we had on our water beds, and did what I hope looks like a bulletin board that significant events are on from our time at Lafayette. So there are album covers, and there are t-shirts of first co-eds. Everybody had a t-shirt, got a couple people to give them up. There are things like the World Trade Center was finished that year. There's a picture of that. So I did a lot of research online and came up with this quilt, which is now part of their permanent collection.
So being a native New Yorker, I would guess that was around 1974.
It was.
Okay, I watched that World Trade Center being built. So
Sure.
so I've never asked you this, and I'll be to surprise you. How did you make your way to New Hope?
So it's a bittersweet story. I married the boy with the waterbed, my husband George, and he died when we were 29 years old. And his best friend, who had been the best man at our wedding, was living in San Francisco and was still single, and we got together. And I moved out to California to be with him. He worked for Atari as a game designer. And then Atari closed. And I said, I want to go back east. And the only place the both of us would agree on was New Hope. He had gone to Lawrenceville and had great memories of the Stockton Inn with the silver dollars in the sidewalk. I had great memories of coming down and wandering through New Hope from college. And so it was the one place we could agree on. So we're here.
So yeah, he's a great guy too. So
He is a good guy.
That's a great story. Very
Yeah.
nice. Very moving, but very nice. So you started quilting pretty much in the 70s, would you say?
No, I pretty much didn't. I did knitting design for a long time. I worked for Vogue Knitting Magazine and Family Circle, McCall's, and I did a lot of knitting designs. And I got hired by a company named Rowan which is a brand new yarn company out of England, to be a sales rep for New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And their main designer was a fellow named Kaffe Fassett. And that was around 1985. And we became close friends. And then when I, a little bit late in life, was pregnant with my first child, I thought she needed a quilt. So I made a quilt for Alex, who you know. And I thought, I think there's a book in this with my friend Kaffe Fassett. Okay. And so I sent him a postcard and I said, how about doing a book with me?
Very nice. So I believe I have three images of three of your favorite quilts.
These are quilts that I've done on my own.
On your own,
with,
yes.
With Kaffe's fabric, but these are my designs.
Okay, because we all know we're going to get to Kaffe. So one of them is Liza's hex top. Is that correct?
Yeah, glorious hexagons.
Our glorious hexagons, and I believe another one is Dreamy Hexagon.
It is, and that's a combination of three kinds of things: applique, English paper piecing, and machine piecing.
Right, and then we have the windmill, the windmill quilt.
That's fairly recent. That was done with the hand-woven Indian striped fabrics, which you'll learn a little bit more about in a little while. These are my favorite fabrics. By the way, that one's machine pieced. My very favorite quilt, which was the first one, was all done by hand.
Oh, okay, very nice. And that would have been the hex top. Right. Many people probably know this because they've seen glorious quilts at many of our shows, and I'm sure some of those were in those exhibits. Liza has a bounty of quilts in her home.
I do.
And we've reached out to her many times over the years. For quilt exhibits, and they always light up the hall with their color. So it's always fun to do. Tell me a little bit about. I've been to your house. The first time I was absolutely knocked over how you were running this huge fabric business, and in addition, off the back of your house, I didn't realize you had this full crew there. But tell us a little bit about your workspace. I think we have an image maybe of you working with Kaffe here in New Hope.
Yeah, so that's space that was also on my store. That's on a weekend when my helpers weren't here. I had a business called Glorious Color. It was an online retail fabric business. We shipped all over the world, specializing in the fabrics of the Kaffe Fassett Collective. And I sold it recently to my friend Mira, who has taken up the reins and done a beautiful job. So Glorious Color still exists. Just moved a little bit south and over to New Jersey. And that's a space that you see a little corner of with Kaffe working on a design wall and me cutting, which is really typical of how we work together. He comes up with an idea and I start cutting and he starts putting it up, and sometimes it's magical.
Very creative. How many years were you in the fabric business?
The store, we started.
Well, all told, for wholesale and.
Oh my God! Well, since I left college, I went away to go to graduate school, and I ended up opening a needlepoint shop in Georgetown, in DC.
Oh, I never realized that. That's very interesting.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So since 74.
Wow. Okay. So
I'm really old.
I don't know. I kind of got you as a hippie a little bit now.
Yeah. Well, the last Zoom I did, which was 2 days ago, was for the Woodstock Museum for their 50th anniversary. I was there.
Oh, they're very.
Were you there?
Yes, I was.
Oh, I saw you there.
So, I don't remember much of it, but I was there.
I remember it.
Okay, so you also teach, and
I do.
when did you start teaching, and do you still
Hmm.
teach? And what is your
Well, the pandemic's gotten in the way.
well, besides our life interrupted by COVID-19?
Yeah, Kate teaches all over the world with Brandon. I teach mostly in America. I've done a couple of cruises where I've taught. Most recently was a few days before the pandemic started. I was on a Caribbean cruise. I left a year ago today and taught the Big Stitch. Actually, was teaching hexagons. I was teaching hexagons, and this, the class project was this little hexagon ditty bag, and
Nice.
glad we did it. But yikes, got home just in time.
So before we move on to the business world, living in New Hope, we were surrounded by beautiful surroundings,
We are.
so I understand that you one of your books you focused the background on some New Hope sightseeing.
So Kate and I do an annual soft cover book for the Free Spirit Company so that people know how to use our interesting fabrics. This is a concept that came out of the knitting world where we come from. In the knitting world, if you make yarn, you make a book to go with the yarn. And that really wasn't done in our industry until we came along. So we do an annual book to match our fabrics. And Kate would come here year in and year out and say, I've got to do something on that barn or that house or whatever for photography. And so here's a picture of one of yours and my favorite places just down the road.
I love that. Catalosa Farm.
Yep. Isn't that beautiful?
Look at the moss on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people that come to Bucks County, particularly along the Delaware River, it's very, very reminiscent of Europe. It's one of the
I'm
places.
not sure how much you can see, but this was on a barn,
Right.
not too far away.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, I love to go out even now and still photograph architecture and
Oh, sure.
all the stone homes and what have you.
Well, I mean, this is where art in America basically started.
Yes.
All of those Peaceable Kingdoms by Hicks and so on, right here.
Oh yeah, there's a great book called the Genius Belt that was published by the Michener Museum that gives the history of all the different authors and artists that were in Bucks County. So we are in a great place. So I have before we go, we did sit down a few days back with Kaffe and we had a nice talk. I have a great photograph here of you, Kaffe, and Brandon. So we could show that photograph and perhaps we could go right into our interview with Kaffe.
Great, do that.
Good evening, Kaffe. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good. All the way over there in London.
Yeah.
And Liza, how are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you, David?
Great,
Neighbor, I should say.
I'm sorry?
I said, how are you, neighbor?
Yeah, we are neighbors. And a lot of people may not know that, but Liza and I both live in New Hope, Pennsylvania, and Kaffe is across the pond. Even though we still consider him our neighbor. How's everything? How does it go with the lockdowns? I know that they're very strict in London and the UK in general.
Oh yeah. You've got to wear a mask on the tube and all of that. But we're getting through it. It's the numbers are good. It's all trailing off. So they think that maybe by the spring we'll be kind of trying to get roughly back to normal.
Yeah, and we're going to see what the new normal is, I guess.
Yes, exactly. My
favorite thing is the tube, the lift, and mind the gap.
That's right, mind the gap.
Mind the gap. So tell us what have you been doing artistically these days?
Well, I'm just what's interesting is everybody else is complaining that their lives are so turned upside down. I'm just going on as usual. I'm making my quilts. I'm designing my fabrics. I'm doing my colorways. I'm doing my needlepoint, my knitting, my paintings. I've gotten a few commissions to do paintings, which is lovely, from people who just buy it over the internet, which is great. But no, I just I find that my life is pretty much the same. I mean, I'm I'm here with my big toy box. I'm able to play with all of my colors and fabrics, and I'm happy as Larry.
That's really nice. Tell me a little bit. I wasn't going to go in this direction, but what do you work in with paintings? Are you work watercolor, oil, acrylic?
Acrylic.
Acrylic.
Yeah, because I'm very impatient. I used to work with oils, but I love acrylic because it dries quickly and you can work over it, and it's a very immediate kind of painting for me. So I'm really enjoying that.
And the genre, is it abstract or is it realism or?
Oh no, very real. Yeah. Just I mean, they're quick sketches usually of still lives, pots and if they're color combinations is what they are for me. They're color explorations of putting all of my different colored pots together, or a new plant, or a cabbage. I just did a painting of a cabbage, and things like that.
Oh, there we go. There's a nice example. Very nice. Thank you, Liza. That looks great. All right. I love it. I love it. I love painting. So it's
yeah.
I was just as you know, I have an antiques background. I have an antique shop, and I was just cleaning a 19th century still life yesterday. And getting it into a period frame. So still lives, portraits. Those are my favorites.
Yeah.
All right. So very nice. So we know that you guys, I guess we wanted to ask you, tell us something about, I guess we'll put up our first image. Tell us something about the painting and how things got started with both Liza and yourself.
Right. Well, I did a painting of a fantastic patchwork quilt that a woman had in her antique shop up the street. And I just put a note under her door and I said, you've put these pots on top of this beautiful patchwork quilt. All the colors are so fabulous. I said, you're just a genius. And she called me, and I put my phone number and I said, I'd like to do a painting of everything in this window. And she called the next day, she called me up and she said, what a wizard idea. Come and get it. And she handed me a cardboard box with everything that was in the window. She didn't know me from Adam. She gave me all these antiques and this wonderful patchwork quilt, and I did this painting. And it was bought by some woman who loved it when she bought it. And then she changed her whole decor and called Liza up and said, I heard that you're a fan of Kaffe Fassett's paintings, and I've got one of his. And Liza said, what's the subject matter? And she said, a patchwork quilt. And Liza said, oh, I'll have to ask my husband if I'm allowed to. And then she put the phone down and just screamed, and then got back on and said, I'll have it. And when she got that painting, that was my favorite painting of that period. I said, and then she asked me to do a book with her. And I said, well, that's an omen. If you've got that painting, you deserve to have a book with me. Let's go.
Well, I said, do you still have it?
I do. It's in my living room. Come visit.
It's in the, okay, I'll be up. Right, as soon as this is all over, all this craziness is over. It's in the living room. Okay. So you still have it. It hasn't landed in a museum yet.
Not yet.
Was that your, I'm assuming you painted before that, but that was just something that really inspired you.
You mean inspired me to make the quilts? Or
yes.
I was making quilts before that, but I wanted to do a book, and a friend of mine said, how do you, get into this book business? And I said, I don't know. I'm not very well known in that world. And he said, well, isn't your friend Kaffe a textile artist? And I said, yes. He said, well, why not combine with him? And I said, wizard idea.
Well, how did you then meet? Because of this painting? Or?
No, we worked together for the same yarn company years before that.
Okay, yarn. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so you already had an association. So
yeah.
So you decided to go into publishing together because you were excited about doing that together. But tell me, how did the Oxfam and the experience of making fabric in India come about? We have some images. We have three images in particular that you took in the early 90s in India.
Yeah. Well, that was just the most fabulous experience. I went to India once with a woman who was working with charities, and she introduced me to the Oxfam office, which is this big charity here in England. And the man who was in charge there just looked at me and he said, "You're the kind of person we want to be involved with our industry." Anyway, so he got me to come out there on a second trip and go into poverty-stricken villages that were just destitute, but they were weavers, wonderful weavers, in a very primitive little houses in the middle of the jungle. And they had dirt floors. They were just amazing, but they would have these little stick looms and they were weaving this beautiful handkerchief weight fabric, which I just loved. They were mostly making saris. And I just knitted them a great big swatch that had all different stripes on it. And I said, make some weaving that looks like these stripes. And they wove this wonderful sample bolt of fabric that was all the different stripes. And we just cut it up, and that was our first collection. And it was just amazing. I mean, that's what got me into the industry, because once I had those stripes, then people said, "Well, we love the stripes, but give us some prints to go with the stripes." And I thought, well, I can do that. And I sat down and I started designing. I did a thing called Roman glass, which is one of our classics now. It's still in the range after all of these years, which, this industry, how fast fabrics come and go. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a miracle that it's still around and people can still buy it.
Yeah,
the Oxfam Adventure happened at the exact same time that I got the painting. The whole thing came together in the most amazing way, because I sent a note off to England, postcard. I mean, you didn't call long distance back then. And I said, how about doing a quilt book with me? And Kaffe wrote back and said, just back from India. And so when he came to visit me, he brought the swatch book. And I thought, I think we can make fabric for quilters like this. And it's just all meant to be.
Yeah, the photographs are fabulous. The one of the men sitting on the ground and working, and then, an example of the fabric, and then the one with the weaving. I think the last photograph then that I think I have in that group is more what we have today.
Yeah, that's still hand woven in India, but they're the current collection that we're still going on with them. But what's funny? When we first arrived in India, I went with Brandon, my friend, and he had these little round glasses, and he was very, he's kind of a scamp, and he likes to tell jokes and things. Anyway, they looked at me and they said, "You are Ganesh, the great, god with the sort of elephant face. And this is your little monkey friend called Handyman." And they got it absolutely right. I mean, he was the scamp. He was jumping all over. The first thing he did was to go out and buy balloons for all the children in the village. And they nearly went insane. I mean, to think of a little bit of rubber and some hot air made those children happy for hours. It was amazing.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure, of course, of meeting Brandon, and he's very nice. I don't know if I would describe him the same way you did, but he's very nice. We had a great time out in PIQF. So obviously you started publishing. Okay, so I have images of a couple of books. The first one being Glorious Patchwork. Was that the first book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah,
Liza, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
before you had any printed fabrics, there were a couple of striped items in there.
That's right.
There were no prints.
Yeah. So we were just traveling the countryside, going to every little quilt shop and buying up fabrics. And that's when I realized that most fabrics were very small scale. Debbie Mum was the queen of the May at that time.
Right. That's
and
right.
Thimbleberries was just everywhere. And so we had these tiny little prints. And I thought, I want great big cabbages and cabbage roses and ribbons and so on. So, we started designing big scale fabrics, which everybody turned their nose up at first. And then what's happened.
Yeah, we know what happened. The rest is history. Like
yeah.
The rest is history. Oh, the rest is quilting history.
Yeah.
So the next book I have an image of is the Victorian, the V&A, the Victorian Albert fabric. So is that the second book, or was there anything in between there?
No, that was about the third or fourth. Okay. Well, I mean, even more than that, because then we started doing an annual book, and then we occasionally would do these hardcover books. but we went to the Victorian Albert and were able to get into all of their ranges of antiques and fabrics and quilts and look at everything and so forth. So that was a wonderful adventure. You know, I love being associated with the museum because you get to see all the examples of the past, these that have been kept through the ages.
It's one of my favorites, and you're right. They're very strong in textiles. And the last time we
Yeah.
were in
Well,
London,
we had to change the name from Kaffe Fassett at the V&A because somebody in Sweden said, "What is we and a?" So you know, they didn't understand it. So we thought we just made a glorious color. I think wasn't that glorious?
No, museum quilts in America.
Oh, museum
DNA
quilt. That's
DNA
right.
is on the British copies, but in the American copies, it just says museum quilts.
Yeah.
So, Liza, how many quilts? Excuse me. How many books have you published with Kaffe?
We've done 6 hardcovers, and we're working on the 7th now and the 24th of the soft covers.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that leads me into what's next for you two.
Oh,
More.
well, we're well into the next book, next 2 books. So we got another hardback that we're thinking about. It hasn't been given birth to yet, but we're well into the next annual book. And I've got a fabulous castle in Wales that I've pigeonholed to shoot the thing in. So we're hoping they're going to give us permission
Book in April.
to go and do that there.
Book in April. Cave Studio.
And I've got a book about my house. One of the things that happens to me all the time when I'm on the road giving talks, people come up and say, "Can we go to your house? We're going to come to London. You know, where is the address?" And I say, "Stay home. I can't be putting up with everybody coming to the house." So finally, I've done a book all about the house. And so people can just buy the book instead of having to come here.
Right.
And that will be coming out in April.
It's my understanding you're also into antiques and a lot of visual items.
Oh yeah.
So,
It's a madhouse, and we didn't tidy up for the book. So it is exactly the way it looks.
If I get that address, you might catch me at your door.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. So how long has this been going on between you two?
Well, I can tell you exactly because I was holding my newborn baby when I proposed the first book, and she just turned 27.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's the story of our relationship.
We've known Liza and they're all through the school system. Her children are the same. Her daughter's the same school system as my kid. And
Yep.
So yeah, it's amazing though how time goes fast too.
Well, in fact, David, we never connected through quilt making for many years.
That's correct.
We connected through theater.
That's right, through theater. You know, they were very involved with the theater. You know, my wife Terry was doing the costumes. You know, we had the Bernina machines all over the house. So,
Oh, wonderful.
and that is how. That's actually, you're right. That is how we met. Not.
And I brought Kaffe to a
Right.
theater party that you were at,
Yes.
and that's when you met him.
Yes, that's the first time I've met. Yes, that's correct. And then Kaffe has taught for us in New Jersey. He did a wonderful thing out in California a couple of years ago, and that was really exciting. Right, very exciting. And I think you broke all records for the number of attendees at a lecture that we've had. So
Oh, how wonderful.
yeah, it was
Great.
great, and we enjoyed both you and Brandon having you there, and it was a great experience. So. Could we add anything else to this, or
Let's get this pandemic done and get
Yeah.
together in person, shall we?
okay?
Yeah.
Let's do
I'm dying to get out and do real workshops with real people.
and we're dying to do the same thing. And
And I'm dying to see you. I
Right.
really am.
And meanwhile, we will continue virtually, and
We
we thank you very much for joining us for this, and we are looking forward to seeing you again in person and teaching and lecturing and
Yeah. Let's do a lecture. That'd be really fun.
I like the lecture, and let's do one virtually too. Let's do
Yeah,
a virtual
exactly.
lecture. Yeah,
Exactly.
let's do that.
Yeah.
And let's get Liza to teach some workshops virtually too. So
Happy
Good.
to.
this will be great.
Good.
Okay, I thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah. Nice to see you again. Ciao.
Okay, Liza, that was a great little journey across the big pond to visit Kaffe. He's always a pleasure. We have a lot of fun when he comes and he teaches for us, when he's lectured for us. It's just an amazing thing. I know that the two of you have a long, long lasting relationship. What's it like to work with him?
I feel like I'm the luckiest quilt maker on the planet. I get to work with a color genius. One of my heroes, one of my really closest friends. I can say he's probably learned as much from me as I have from him in some ways. It's an interesting combination because often I'm just the seamstress. He comes up with a complete concept and I just sew it together. And sometimes he'll come up with just an idea and I will bring it to him with measurements and flesh it out. And then he'll just tell me, go with it, because I know what he's thinking. And then sometimes I go off on my own completely. And just as you saw that dreamy hexagon quilt, it's one of his very favorite quilts that any of us have ever done. So sometimes it's 100% me. It's a pleasure.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's amazing because a lot of people don't last that long together, particularly in business. And in the arts, so that it's a great and it's an amazing story how you got into this, starting with the knitting and the wool and the whole thing's just amazing to me. So I know that you two probably have done a lot of traveling together. So
we have, but I was going to say, I'm going to back up and tell you, one story about how he learned to trust me. He would come here every few months, and because I had the stash. And we'd lay out things and he'd come up with his ideas and we'd sketch them out and I'd measure. And then I would take a photograph of what it is that he was working on or what he wanted me to do, because he was going to fly back to London. And so I would take the photograph and then we would do another quilt and we put it down and take photograph and so on. And I put him on a plane back and I came to breakfast the next morning. And my 2-year-old showed me the ribbon she had found inside my camera. And I didn't have the guts to call him and tell him. So I did everything from memory and he never knew. So that's how he knew he could trust me.
Very good. Yeah, those were the older cameras too. So that would definitely
when we started working together, there was no phone calls back and forth. This was postcards and cameras.
Yeah, I remember thinking the fax machine was the greatest invention of
oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So I know the two of you have done a lot of traveling together.
We have.
You have a travel story you'd like to tell out of school?
Well, there was the time that we were to teach at a quilt festival in Innsbruck. And I went to London ahead of time to work with him. And we had to get up something like 6 a.m. to get to Heathrow Airport. And we get to Terminal 5 and we pull out our passports and he has one of his old ones. He had never thrown out his old passports. So he didn't have one with him. And of course, back then, there was just no backup. So Brandon got in a taxi and went all the way back, which is almost an hour ride back home, and told us where he'd meet us in Innsbruck, and it worked. Yikes.
Yikes is right. It was difficult traveling back then. It's even tougher now.
No cell phones.
No cell phones. Yep.
How we found each other, I don't know.
You wonder how we did it. That's a crazy travel story for sure. So as Liza Lucy, where are you doing now? What are you working on now? Where do you go next?
More. Kaffe and I are about to work on our 24th book together, our 24th annual book. And then every 4 or 5 years, we do a serious hardcover book with the Abrams Publishing Company. And we're just starting one now. So that will be the 7th of our hardcover books.
Are you working on any quilts right now for yourself?
I'm not sure any of them are for myself, but they all are. Right. And the answer is yes, of course. Yeah. And for my own pleasure, I'm sewing hexagons. Very nice. It's my evening quiet time, and that's for me.
A good thing to do during a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So I think that I know that one of our major sponsors, and I always like to bring them up. They're actually our founding sponsor. They were sewing machine company to jump on board with us. Still are. They're big sponsors at this show. Is Bernina of America. I understand you have a relationship with them also.
I do. I'm a Bernina ambassador, and they just sent me their 770 QE to give a try, and it's big. And it's shiny and it's beautiful, and I'm a little bit intimidated, but I'm developing a relationship with it. And one of the good things about this pandemic is that I can't escape. I mean, I'm going to learn this machine, so
Take it for a ride.
here goes. Yeah, yeah.
Very nice. Okay, I think this has been a great evening.
Enjoyed
Live
it.
from New Hope. It's been a great evening, and I really appreciate you coming along with us and coming along on our trip across the pond, our Zoom trip across the pond to visit Kaffe, and it's always a pleasure.
See you at the grocery store soon.
Yes, that's where we run into each other, right?
Yeah.
At the grocery store.
Good night, David.
Liza.